Good day, magandang araw, mabuhay to everyone. I'm Christine Galapo and welcome to today's presentation. So, we'll be exploring the fascinating process of photosynthesis and the vital role of chloroplasts. So, here's our topic outline. First, we will define photosynthesis. Second, discover the origin of photosynthesis. Explore the chloroplast structure. Take a quick overview of the photosynthetic metabolism. Understand how light is absorbed to perform photosynthesis, and coordinate the action of two different photosynthetic systems. So let's start. Photosynthesis, light, energy, and life. Photosynthesis is the cornerstone of life on Earth, allowing plants to convert light energy into chemical energy, providing oxygen and food for nearly all living organisms. Let's begin our journey into the heart of photosynthesis by defining it first. So, what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is a system of biological processes by which photosynthetic organisms convert light energy, typically from sunlight, into the chemical energy necessary to fuel their metabolism. Ang halimbawa ng mga photosynthetic organism na ito ay macroalgae, plants, microalgae, and cyanobacteria. All these capable of photosynthesis in making their own food. That's why plants are also called the primary producers in our food chain. From this, we will also conclude that not only eukaryotes like plants and algae are able to undergo photosynthesis. There is also prokaryote like cyanobacteria that undergo through this process. It comes from the Greek word photo that means light and synthesis that means to put together. In other words, photosynthesis means to put together with the help of light. But what are the things that are being put together or substances in this process? Do you have any idea? Yes, this process needs water, carbon dioxide, and especially sunlight. Let's discover how photosynthesis begins as an essential process to living organisms I said earlier. The Earth's earliest life forms must have obtained the raw materials and energy from simple organic molecules dissolved in their aqueous environment. These organic molecules had to have formed abiotically, that is, as a result of non-biological chemical reactions occurring in the primeval seas. These organisms that depends on an external source of organic compounds are called heterotrophic. So, nag-umpisa sa mga heterotrophic organisms kung saan ginagamit nila yung organic compounds to sustain their life. Pero dahil sa mabagal na production ng organic materials, heterotrophs living in that time are severely restricted. That's why new organisms with a different metabolic strategy appeared. At hindi tulad sa mga nauna sa kanila, these organisms could manufacture their own organic nutrients from the simplest types of inorganic molecules, such as carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. And these organisms capable of surviving on carbon dioxide as their principal carbon source are called autotrophs. So, from heterotrophs, dahil sa mga factors na nakakaapekto sa environment, nagkaroon ng autotrophs. There are two types of autotrophs, and one of these is the chemoautotrophs. From the word chemo means chemical, it utilizes the chemical energy stored in inorganic molecules such as ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, or nitrites to convert carbon dioxide into organic compounds. Another are photoautotrophs. From the word photo means light, so ito yung mga organisms na ginagamit yung light energy from sunlight and elements from inorganic compounds to produce organic materials needed to sustain their own metabolism. At kabilang nga sa mga organisms na ito ay plants, eukaryotic algae kung saan sinasabi nga natin kanina capable sila sa photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, relatively low-energy electrons are removed from a donor compound and converted into high-energy electrons using the energy absorbed from light. These high-energy electrons are then employed in the synthesis of reduced biological molecules such as starch and oils. Sinasabi ng mga unang klase daw ng photoautotrophs na nanirahan sa Earth ay gumamit ng hydrogen sulfide as their source of electrons for photosynthesis. And here's the overall reaction where CH2O represents a carbohydrate. At tama naman ito dahil ngayon meron pa ring mga bakterya na nagkikerry ng ganitong klase ng photosynthesis. Pero kung titignan natin, hindi na ganun karami ang available na hydrogen sulfide sa ating paligid, kung saan mostly available na lang ito sa mga sulfur springs and sea vents. Hanggang sa dumating daw yung time noon na nag-appear yung isang prokaryotic organism na kayang mag-undergo ng photosynthesis using water, kung saan alam naman natin yung water matatagpuan lang kahit saan, which is a more abundant source of electrons compare sa hydrogen sulfide. Kung kanina sa naunang reaction sa photosynthesis ng sulfur bacteria, ang waste product is sulfide, dito naman sa photosynthesis ng prokaryotic organism na ito, ang waste product is oxygen, kung saan essential ito sa mga living organisms tulad natin. At ang prokaryotic organism na ito ay ang cyanobacteria. At ito ang overall reaction for their photosynthesis, where carbon dioxide plus water with the presence of sunlight will yield to carbohydrates and oxygen as a waste product. At some point in evolutionary history, isa daw sa mga cyanobacteria na ito was engulfed o kinain ng isang primitive eukaryotic cell, a non-photosynthetic organism with mitochondria. At imbis na ma-digest siya nito, nagkaroon pa sila ng mutual relationship. Sana all MU, char. So, this cyanobacterium provided the host cell with organic molecules through photosynthesis, while the host cell offered protection and nutrients for the bacteria. Parehas silang nakinabang sa isa't isa. Tinatawag din itong endosymbiotic theory kung saan over time, this cyanobacterium became a permanent resident inside the host cell, transforming into what now we call a chloroplast, an organelle specialized for photosynthesis in modern plants and algae. During this process, many of the cyanobacterium's genes were transferred to eukaryotic host nucleus, leading to a highly integrated system where the chloroplast and the host cell share genetic and metabolic functions. Kaya pinaniniwalaan na lahat ng modern chloroplasts na matatagpuan sa plants and algae ay nagmula sa single ancient symbiotic event na ito. This is why chloroplasts still share many features with cyanobacteria, including similar photosynthetic machinery. Now let's move to the site where photosynthesis happens. So photosynthesis takes place primarily in the leaves of plants, specifically within the specialized cell structures called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts were identified as the site of photosynthesis in 1881 in an ingenious experiment by the German biologist Theodor Engelmann. Engelmann illuminated cells of the green alga Spirogyra and found that actively moving bacteria would collect outside the cell near the site of the large ribbon-like chloroplasts. The bacteria were utilizing the minute quantities of oxygen released during photosynthesis in the chloroplast for their aerobic respiration. Chloroplasts are predominantly found in the mesophyll cells of leaves. Chloroplasts of higher plants are generally lens-shaped, approximately 2 to 4 micrometer wide and 5 to 10 micrometer long, and typically numbering 20 to 40 per cell. Dahil dito, ang chloroplast ay ang pinakamalaki sa mga organelles, kasing laki nito yung ating red blood cell. So, si chloroplast is nabuo siya sa paghiwalay niya sa pre-existing chloroplasts or their non-pigmented precursors called proplastids. Chloroplasts are surrounded by a double membrane or the envelope. So, sabi nga natin, there are double membrane-bound organelles at isa nga dito ang chloroplast, kung saan meron itong outer membrane that contains sporins but is selectively permeable and inner membrane that is highly impermeable and requires transporters for substances to pass through. It has thylakoids, which are an internal membrane system made up of flattened sacs which are stuck into grana. So ayan, kung makikita natin, parang mga platong pinagpatong-patong. The space inside a thylakoid is called the lumen, while the space outside the thylakoid within the chloroplast is the stroma that contains enzymes for carbohydrate synthesis. The thylakoid membrane contains chlorophyll, a green pigment that is responsible for light absorption and proteins for photosynthesis. Thylakoid membranes are also protein-rich and contain relatively little phospholipid. They have a high percentage of galactose-containing glycolipids kung saan ginagawa nitong high fluid ang membrane na mahalaga sa pagpasok ng mga proteins essential sa photosynthesis. Aside sa mga nabanggit kanina, meron din iba pang pigments, electron carriers, and ATP synthesizing apparatus sa loob ng chloroplast na tumutulong sa process ng photosynthesis. Meron ding DNA and ribosome sa loob nito, where chloroplast DNA codes for 60 to 200 genes, but most of its proteins, around 2,000 to 3,500, are encoded by nuclear DNA and synthesized in the cytosol before being imported into the chloroplast. In conclusion, chloroplasts found in the mesophyll cells of leaves are vital organelles responsible for photosynthesis, with their thylakoid membranes housing pigments and proteins for light absorption. They contain their own DNA, a remnant of their cyanobacterial origin through endosymbiosis, but most of their proteins are encoded by the host cell nucleus. Chloroplasts efficiently convert light energy into chemical energy, producing oxygen and carbohydrates essential for plant life. Now, let's take an overview of the photosynthetic metabolism. Photosynthesis involves the conversion of inorganic matter into organic matter through the energy provided by sunlight. Consider the overall equation of photosynthesis as given earlier, where water and carbon dioxide are combined through the help of sunlight, producing carbohydrate and a waste product, oxygen. Noong 1930, pinaniniwalaan na during photosynthesis, yung energy daw ng light was used to split carbon dioxide, releasing molecular oxygen and transferring the carbon atom to a molecule of water to form a unit of carbohydrate. Hanggang si Cornelis Bernardus Vaniel challenged this belief with his work with sulfur bacteria that led him to propose that organisms reduce carbon dioxide to carbohydrates without producing oxygen. He introduced a generalized equation for photosynthesis where H2A represents an electron donor that can either be water or hydrogen sulfide, showing that water or similar compounds, not carbon dioxide, are split to release oxygen. Vaniel also recognized that photosynthesis is essentially an oxidation-reduction process, where water or other reduced substrates are the reducing agents or electron donors, meaning it donates electrons to other molecules, while carbon dioxide acts as the oxidizing agent, which means it accepts electrons. The overall process in plants can be summarized by the following reaction. Dito, pinapakita na each molecule of oxygen is hindi galing sa carbon dioxide kundi sa dalawang molecules ng water, rejecting the earlier belief. The role of water naman in the formation of molecular oxygen was clearly established in 1941 by Samuel Ruben and Martin Kamen. In their experiment, they used isotopes of oxygen and confirmed that oxygen released during photosynthesis comes from water, not carbon dioxide, where when they put algae to labeled water, they noticed that it released labeled oxygen, confirming Vaniel's hypothesis. So again, sa process ng photosynthesis, si oxygen ay galing sa dalawang molecules ng water at hindi sa carbon dioxide. So tandaan po natin yan. Sinasabi na si photosynthesis at aerobic respiration ay magkatulad na process lamang ngunit magkabaliktad. Halimbawa, kung mapapansin nyo dito sa figure, nagkabaliktad lang sila ng reactants at products, where in aerobic respiration, the reactants are glucose and oxygen and products are carbon dioxide and water, while in photosynthesis, the reactants are carbon dioxide and water, while glucose and oxygen naman yung products. Pinapakita lang sa cyclic relationship na ito ng photosynthesis at respiration kung paano ang isang product ng isang process ay maaari ring maging reactants ng iba pang proseso that helps in maintaining a balance in the ecosystem. In photosynthesis, energy from sunlight is used to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. While in respiration nga, glucose and oxygen are used to produce energy in the form of ATP, carbon dioxide, and water. Plants can perform both photosynthesis and aerobic respiration, kung saan sa umaga, they carry out photosynthesis in their chloroplast, converting light energy into chemical energy like glucose and producing oxygen. Simultaneously, they undergo aerobic respiration in their mitochondria, where they use oxygen to break down sugars produced during photosynthesis to generate ATP, the energy needed for various cellular activities. Photosynthesis has two stages. The light-dependent reaction, from the word light-dependent, ito yung mga reactions na nangangailangan ng light, and the light-independent reaction, from the word light-independent, so ito yung mga reaction na nangyayari kahit walang light or sa mga madidilim na parte. The first stage is the light-dependent reaction, kung saan nangyayari ito sa thylakoid membrane ng chloroplast. Sa reaction na ito, yung energy from sunlight is absorbed and stored as chemical energy in ATP and NADPH. Yung second stage naman ng photosynthesis is nangyayari siya sa stroma ng chloroplast, kung saan tinatawag itong light-independent reaction, also called as dark reactions or Calvin cycle, kung saan yung energy na na-store sa ATP at NADPH kanina sa light-dependent reaction is ginagamit siya upang mag-synthesize ng carbohydrates from carbon dioxide. Plant life on Earth plays a critical role in the global carbon cycle, kung saan kino-convert nito yung halos 500 trillion kilograms of carbon dioxide into carbohydrates annually through photosynthesis. This immense process helps regulate atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, supporting life and contributing to the balance of ecosystems. Kaya naman sana ay patuloy nating silang protektahan at pangalagaan, gaya na lamang ng patuloy na ginagawa nila para sa atin. Now, let's understand how light is being absorbed to make photosynthesis possible, a part of light-dependent reactions. Light travels in packets or quanta of energy called photons. Itong photons din na ito ay tinatawag na particles of light. The energy content of a photon depends on the wavelength of the light according to the equation E is equal to hc over lambda, where h is Planck's constant is equal to 1.58 times 10 raised to negative 34 calorie second, c is the speed of light in a vacuum, and lambda is the wavelength of light. The shorter the wavelength, the higher the energy content. When a photon is absorbed by a molecule, an electron becomes sufficiently energetic to be pushed from an inner to an outer orbital. The molecule is said to have shifted from the ground state to an excited state. The excited state of a molecule is unstable and can be expected to last only about 10 raised to negative 9 seconds. So, napakabilis lang. Kung saan kapag itong excited electrons na ito ay bumalik agad sa pagiging ground state without being used, the energy is released as heat or light or fluorescence. Pero yung chloroplast is may kakayahan siya na i-harness o kuhanin yung absorbed energy na yon bago pa mawala. In chloroplast, excited electrons are transferred to electron acceptors, allowing energy to be harnessed for photosynthesis before it is lost. Sabi nga natin kanina, merong mga pigments sa loob ng chloroplast. They are the compounds that appear colored because they only absorb light of particular wavelengths within the visible spectrum. At isa sa mga pigments na makikita natin dito ay yung chlorophyll. It is the main pigment in photosynthesis found in the chloroplast of the leaves. It absorbs most strongly in the blue and red wavelengths, reflecting green light. Kaya naman ang nakikitang kulay natin sa dahon ay green. Dahil nga yung mga ibang kulay is inaabsorb ng pigment na yon at nire-reflect niya naman sa atin yung kulay green. Gaya ng nakikita nyo sa picture, chlorophyll has a porphyrin ring responsible for light absorption and a phytyl chain that anchors it in the membrane. The ring has a magnesium atom at its center and a system of conjugated double bonds that absorb visible light. Meron din tayong iba't ibang uri ng chlorophyll, differing in side groups attached to the porphyrin ring, tulad ng chlorophyll A na present in all oxygen-producing photosynthetic organism, but it is absent in the various sulfur bacteria, while chlorophyll B naman is present in all higher plants and green algae. Kung chlorophyll reflects green, bakit may mga dahon po na iba ang kulay tulad ng orange or red? So chlorophylls are the primary light-absorbing photosynthetic pigments, but terrestrial plants also contain orange and red accessory pigments. Etong mga pigment na to ay tinatawag nating carotenoids. That includes carotene, which contain a linear system of conjugated double bonds, and it is the responsible for the orange or red color of leaves during autumn or fall. Ito din yung pigment na makikita natin halimbawa sa carrots, kaya siya kulay orange. Carotenoids absorb light primarily in the blue and green region of the absorption spectrum, while reflecting those of the yellow, orange, and red regions. Kung kanina sa chlorophyll, blue and red are being absorbed, while green is reflected kaya nakikita nating kulay ng dahon is green, dito naman sa carotenoids, blue and green are being absorbed, while red or orange are reflected to us. Kaya naman nakikita nating kulay ng dahon, lalo na sa time ng fall, is kulay red or orange. Aside sa pagbibigay kulay ng red or orange sa dahon, carotenoids also act as secondary light collectors during photosynthesis, and they draw excess energy away from excited chlorophyll molecules and dissipate it as heat. Tinutulungan nito na maiwasan ang formation ng singlet oxygen, a reactive form of oxygen na maaaring makasira sa cells at magdulot ng cell death. Here's also some colors of leaves during fall and their corresponding pigments. Absorption spectrum is a plot of the intensity of light absorbed relative to its wavelength. The figure shows the absorption spectrum for several photosynthetic pigments higher plants. The background shows the colors that we perceive for the wavelengths of the visible spectrum. Sabi nga din natin kanina, chlorophylls absorb most strongly in the violet, blue, and red regions of the spectrum, while carotenoids also absorb in the green region. Red algae and cyanobacteria contain additional pigments or phycobilins that absorb in the middle bands of the spectrum. Meron din tayong tinatawag na action spectrum. It is a plot of the relative rate or efficiency of photosynthesis produced by light of various wavelengths. The figure shows the action spectrum for photosynthesis. The action spectrum or the red-colored line indicates the relative efficiency with which light of various wavelengths is able to promote photosynthesis in the leaves of a plant. An action spectrum can be generated by measuring the oxygen produced by the leaves following exposure to various wavelengths. The black lines indicate the absorption spectra of each of the major photosynthetic pigments, while the green line shows the combined absorption spectrum of all pigments. While the absorption spectrum shows the wavelength of light absorbed by pigments, the action spectrum shows the wavelengths most effective in driving photosynthesis. Now, let's proceed to our last topic for today's discussion, which is coordinating the action of two different photosynthetic systems. In 1932, si Robert Emerson and William Arnold ng California Institute of Technology ay nagsagawa ng experiment kung saan sinuggest nila na hindi lahat ng chlorophyll sa chloroplast ay directly nakasali sa pag-convert ng light into chemical energy. Using suspensions of the green alga chlorella and flashing lights of extremely short duration at saturating intensity, they determined the minimum amount of light needed to produce maximal oxygen production during photosynthesis. From this observation, nakita nila na onting percentage lamang ng chlorophyll ang nagpa-participate o kasali sa photosynthesis, kung saan daan-daang bilang nito ay nagsasama-sama as one photosynthetic unit. So parang sa room may group-group din tulad nila. Sa photosynthetic unit na ito, isa lang sa kanila ang nagtatransfer ng electron sa electron acceptor at tinatawag siya bilang reaction center chlorophyll. So sa group, parang siya yung pinaka-leader. Ano naman yung silbi ng ibang chlorophyll sa photosynthetic unit? So sila naman yung nag-act as light harvesting antenna where they absorbs light and transfer excitation energy to the reaction center. Energy is transferred from pigment to pigment in the light harvesting antenna until it reaches the reaction center. And there is a rule na energy can only be transferred to a pigment molecule that absorbs light of an equal or longer wavelength. So, pasa-pasa sila hanggang sa mapunta yung energy sa reaction center. The energy is ultimately transferred to a chlorophyll of the reaction center, which absorbs light of longer wavelength than any of its neighbors. Once the energy is received by the reaction center, the electron excited by light absorption can be transferred to its acceptor. So pag naipasa na sa reaction center, maitatransfer pa ulit to sa acceptor. The light-absorbing reactions of photosynthesis occur in large pigment protein complexes called photosystems. So, meron tayong two types which are the photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. Sa photosystem 2, sa electron na nasa lower energy level ay itinataas papuntang midpoint. Sa photosystem 1 naman, from midpoint, itinataas pa siya sa high energy level para ma-reduce yung NADP plus to NADPH. Both photosystems act in series to accomplish the full electron transfer needed for photosynthesis. Sa photosystem 2, ang kanyang reaction center ay tinatawag na P680, kung saan nag-absorb ito ng light at 680 nanometer. Samantalang, ang reaction center naman ng photosystem 1 ay tinatawag na P700, where it absorbs light at 700 nanometer. Both photosystem 2 and photosystem 1 absorb sunlight via antenna pigments which pass the energy to the reaction centers. Electrons in these reaction centers are excited to higher energy states and transferred to a primary electron acceptor. After losing electrons, the reaction centers of PS2 and PS1 became positively charged, while the electron acceptors become negatively charged. Kung mapapansin natin dito sa figure, yung reaction center, after niya mag-lose ng electrons, nagiging positive siya. Samantalang yung acceptors ay nagiging negative. So, sabi nga natin, kung sino yung nagbigay, siya yung magiging positive, at kung sino yung tumanggap, siya yung magiging negative. This separation of charges is a key step in converting light energy into chemical energy. At sa mga susunod na discussions, mas matatalakay pa ang dalawang photosystems na ito. So before we end, let's have some fun fact. Did you know that not all plants photosynthesize? So yes, because some plants don't have chlorophyll like the pitcher plant. The pitcher plant is fully heterotrophic and does not perform photosynthesis. These insectivorous plants grow in nitrogen-deficient soil, so they feed on insects to obtain nutrients such as nitrogen. Photosynthesis powered by chloroplasts is the essential process that fuels life on Earth, converting sunlight into energy and producing oxygen. Understanding how chloroplasts function within plant cells highlights the intricate relationship between light, carbon dioxide, and water, all working together to sustain ecosystems and the global environment. So that's all for our today's discussion. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned many things and have a nice day.